Hello and welcome to episode 69 of the Ohio Huntsman Podcast. And today, it's just Jacob and I, but we talk about eating wild game, cooking and eating wild game. So we just wrapped up gun season, so hopefully you've got some venison in the freezer. And so we thought it would be a good opportunity to talk about eating wild game and different ways to prepare it, ways that we like to prepare it. And we obviously talk about venison, but we also talk about other wild game because there's other wild game to eat out there. So that's what this episode's about. Like I said, some recipes, different ways that we like to prepare. We talk about a few cuts or pieces that often get overlooked but are really good. And there will be links in the show notes to videos, cookbooks. We mentioned a lot of that stuff in this one about, how to do a venison shoulder roast or, and so we'll link to those videos or the cookbooks where we found those recipes, that sort of thing, in the show notes on this one so that you guys can find all that and reference all of that. So, before we get into that, I want to talk about our sponsor, Mastin's Deer Scents. So they are a premium deer scent company, and basically they've got what you need when it comes to scent. So if you like using scent to get deer in front of your cameras, works great for that. If you need a cover scent, they've got a smell like a deer cover scent that works great. We've had good success with that. They've got, we're kind of past the rut, but they've got great rut scents, estrus, and one they call the buck reaper. And they've got different ways of using the scent. So they've got scented gel crystals, they've got scented candles, they've got their double scent stacker that you can put a scented candle in and then a liquid scent on top, and the candle heats the scent. And so you can kind of layer scents. So great deer scent company. It's a great product. The prices are really good, so we're happy to have them as a sponsor. And if you use scent, I would encourage you to check them out. So there'll be a link in the show notes for how to get in touch with them. You just go to their website, mastinsdeerscents.com, and order right from their website, and they'll ship it right to your house. So with that, let's get into this episode about eating and cooking wild game. Welcome to the Ohio Huntsman Podcast, where three brothers, Jason, Jacob, and Jeff, discuss all things hunting in Ohio. Our goal is to be your source for accurate and reliable hunting news and conservation issues in the great state of Ohio, as well as some fun and interesting conversations along the way. This is the Ohio Huntsman Podcast.
Are you listening?
All right, so today it's Jacob and I, and we are going to talk about eating, cooking. We're actually recording this what is today? The Friday before Thanksgiving. So we've got food on the mind. This is going to release well after Thanksgiving, but we're recording it the Friday before Thanksgiving. So food on the brain. And so we thought it would be a good time to talk about wild food, wild game, cooking and eating wild game, some of our favorite recipes, different ways to prepare, different cuts. So that's kind of the main topic for today. Before we get into that, though, we've got some listener mail. I don't know what I want to call it. Listener questions and a couple of just kind of things I guess I want to talk about before we get into the main topic. So if you guys listened to our hunting etiquette episode, that was episode 66. If you didn't, go back and listen to it. It's a good episode. From that episode, we had some people reach out to us with some of their hunting etiquette scenarios, right? Things that have happened to them, and they wanted our input on it. We asked for that in the episode, and so we've got some of that content, or some of those questions, I guess. And so one of them that I thought was particularly interesting was this guy says he hunts county parks, so it's a parks hunt, and it says so do other hunters. And so I don't know exactly how, he doesn't say what county, And so I don't know exactly how the parks hunt works. Our experience with parks hunts is you get drawn and you are allowed to pick a handful of buddies to go in there with you, right? So into your zone, you're awarded a particular zone that you're allowed to hunt. It's got very clear boundaries. You're allowed in here and not in the neighboring zone or any of the other zones. You get one zone, you get it for a portion of the season, and then you have to get all your stuff out of there, and the next group of guys come in. So it sounds like our experience with parks hunts is a little different than this, in that the other guys that are hunting these parks aren't necessarily picked by this guy that submitted the question. So he says he hunts county parks, so do other hunters, and they're allowed to bait and put up trail cameras. So, he did his homework. He scouted, found a good place, set up his feeder and stand, and it looks like, he was basically had success early. The second time he hunted his stand, he shot a doe. Now, here's where the etiquette or ethics question comes in, Jake. And so I'm going to kind of summarize this and then we'll kind of comment on it. So he says a few days later, he gets an email from another hunter in the program who shot a doe by his feeder, and he says, quote, "not my stand." So this other hunter shot a doe basically while hunting from his feeder, but not hunting out of his stand. He also mentioned that he pulled the card from his trail camera. So this mystery hunter, if you will, pulled the card out of the original hunter's camera to see if it would show where he hit the deer and where it went. And he wants our input on it. So what he thinks that was not cool. So, Jake, I guess what are your thoughts on did I do a good job summarizing this, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you summarized it pretty well. Basically, the listener, like you said, got a doe early, and then another guy, we're not clear if he didn't make it sound like it's a buddy of his. It sounds like it's another guy in the program, but somehow they do have a way of communicating.
Yeah.
So I mean, in terms of the feeder, I don't know. It depends how big the area is. You know what I mean? If it's a huge area where all the guys have room to spread out, that's probably a little more out of bounds versus if it's 20 acres and his feeder's right in the middle of it. You know what I mean? Like if it's just a small chunk and this guy set a feeder up right in the middle where a gas line and a power line cross, where the deer are going to be moving. You know what I mean? You can't kind of lay claim to the whole chunk of woods.
Right.
But again, we have no idea. I'm making assumptions. So the feeder part doesn't really grind my gears too much. I'm really don't touch my stuff. Like the whole camera thing bothers me. That's not your trail camera. That's not your memory card, especially if you don't really know the guy. There's a lot of dishonest people out there. And that part, I think that's out of bounds. You don't touch my trail, don't touch my stuff type thing.
Yeah. I would agree. I think it's like, I guess I kind of view it like setting up a feeder on public ground, he's got just as much right to be there. I don't know that I would do it, right? That's somebody else's setup. That would feel kind of like cheating to me, right? Unless, like you said, it's a small chunk and there's really nowhere else to hunt, because if you say, well, you can't hunt over my feeder, that's poor hunting etiquette or unethical. Where's the line, right? How far away do you have to be from the feeder before?
Right.
They're coming to the feeder.
Right.
And so
if
whether you're hunting next to the feeder or 50 yards from the feeder, but still catching deer coming to the feeder, I mean, it's so I don't so much have an issue with shooting a deer over his feeder. It's, it is what it is, I guess. I don't know that I would do it, but it's,
yeah, that, like I said, the feeder part, like you said, like you could, okay, you don't want me to hunt your feeder. Like you said, I'll back off 50 yards and just hunt the trail they're going to walk to the feeder.
Right, yeah.
It's really still your feeder.
Yeah.
That's bringing them in or whatever. So, like I said, the feeder doesn't grind my gears or get me as worked up, but the trail camera part where he, went into his camera and pulled his card to try to see where he had hit the deer, that to me is a stretch. I don't, you know what I mean? If that's really what you're after, if you're concerned about it, clearly you have a way to get a hold of me. So get a hold of me and say, hey, I hit this deer. I'm not sure where I hit it. I can't find blood. Do you mind if I pull your camera to take a look?
Exactly. That's where I'm at, right? He's obviously got a way to get in touch with the guy. And I guess to the flip side of it, right? He did tell him, like, hey, just so you know, I shot a deer over your feeder and I poked around in your camera. He could have just not done any of that, right? And
right.
The listener may have never been the wiser. But don't touch my camera, right? I don't, it's people steal these things. They grow legs and walk away, and obviously this guy didn't steal it, but that's where I think the line was kind of crossed, right? That's sort of private property invade. I know it's on public ground, but it's my thing, right? Don't mess with it, I guess. Unless, like you said, you've got a way to get in touch with the guy. Shoot him an email, send him a phone call or whatever. Hey man, I see you got a camera here. Would you mind if I looked at it? I'm trying to find this deer.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really think of it. But the fact that he even reached out to him and told him what happened is, I guess, kind of good on him a little bit. Because like you said, he could have just shot a deer off his feeder and no one ever would have known the difference.
Right.
Other than he's got a camera up there, so he probably would have saw the guy coming in and out. But
yeah,
but yeah, the camera is what gets me. Don't touch my camera. That's private property. For all you know, that SD card could have other information on it. You don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can store a lot of stuff on an SD card. It's not necessarily all going to be trail camera pictures.
Yeah.
So now you're digging into my stuff, and what if I have personal information on that card?
Yeah.
Granted, you probably shouldn't put personal information in a trail camera that's on public land, but
yeah,
still, it's, I lock my cameras up, I lock them shut, and I lock them into a tree.
Yeah, you use separate locks, right? You use like a cable lock to lock it to the tree, and then just like a regular key lock to lock the camera shut, right?
Yeah, depending on the style of the camera. Some of the cameras now, the like lever that you have to flip to open the door, your cable lock, it has a spot where your cable lock will run through that, so you can't flip the lever without undoing the cable lock. But another one of my cameras, has a separate, I cable lock it to the tree, and then there's a separate spot on the little door. It's a Browning camera, on the little lever you flip to open the door to access it. That's got a spot where I'd put just a little master lock. Again, if you're really looking to steal it, none of that's going to stop you. A pair of bolt cutters or, whatever.
Yeah.
You could easily get it. It's just going to stop the dishonest guy who happens to be strolling through the woods.
Right.
If you're coming in to steal my camera, nothing is going to stop you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've had cameras disappear, though, so that's why I do that.
Right. Yeah. Like you said, it's a deterrent. It's not going to stop somebody that finds it and has, malicious intent and is going to go back to, his shop and get a pair of bolt cutters and come back. It'll be gone. But so another thing I wanted to touch on is this So we got this email about this ODNR investigation that led to arrests an arrest, I guess, for timber theft, which I guess the reason I wanted to touch on this was because I didn't even realize that timber theft was a thing. So apparently what I can gather from this email, and this is their public release, information. So it says a Ross County resident was recently convicted and sentenced for stealing timber from Tar Hollow and Scioto Trail state forests and from several private properties in the area. So basically it sounds like this guy was cutting trees down, taking the valuable lower section of the tree, the main trunk, hauling them off and selling them. And he was either taking them off of private property or state forests and selling them. And this guy got convicted. He was sentenced in a Ross County court to 16 months in jail and ordered to pay $4,864 in restitution. Officers also seized equipment used during the thefts, including chainsaws, trailers, and winching equipment. So, yeah, who knew? I don't know. I don't know the scenario, but it just feels like, man, that takes some cojones, man. I'm going to cut your tree down and haul it off and sell it.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard of like a tree that's on the property line or close to it. I've heard of there being like disputes of like, hey, you cut that tree, that wasn't yours to cut.
Right.
And now we need to figure that out. And whether that's privately or in court depends on the situation, I guess. But yeah, for a guy, and it's not like he just came in and, like, I don't know, like they were putting power lines in through a state park and he came in and took the wood that the trees they cut down to put the power lines in. Like he's full blown, like taking what sounds like a timbering operation, or at least, you know what I mean? Like and cutting trees.
Yeah, and he's taking it says he's taking high value. Yeah, black walnut and white oak trees. Right.
So yeah, I don't know. None of cutting a tree down is a quiet thing.
Right. That's why I was like,
yeah,
what?
It's kind of wild. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you can't be secretive about cutting a tree down with a chainsaw.
No.
Especially high value trees. Those are big trees. So not only the cutting, but them timbering and falling, it's going to make a heck of a racket.
Yeah. So I guess if you're in a pretty, because I hear chainsaws running all the time, and I don't think anything. Now I don't have a big chunk of property, but I guess you could hear a chainsaw running and think, oh, neighbor's cutting trees or something, and then that neighbor's thinking, oh, you're cutting trees, and when really neither of you are cutting trees, it's somebody over there stealing your trees. So I don't know. I guess I just wanted to mention that because it was just, I was like, I read this email and I was like, really? That's a thing. That's a thing that happens. People cut down trees and steal them. Who knew? So yeah, if anybody has any info or any like additional information on this, I'd be curious to hear how this sort of plays out. Like, how do you go about stealing someone's tree?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would imagine you'd have to have a pretty big piece of property too to not know. I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe not. Like you said, you hear the neighbor cutting. If you have enough property where the neighbor is out of eyesight, you don't think anything of it. I mean,
yeah. Or if it's, out of, an out of state owner, or maybe they're not out of state, but they've got a piece of recreational property, but they live up in Cleveland or somewhere up that way, but they've got a piece of property, down in Washington County or something like that. This didn't happen in Washington County. It says it was, where did I read that? Ross County resident. So, but you get the drift, right? Get the point. If it's a non-local property owner, maybe you could, steal their trees. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. Like you said, though, I think that's a pretty brave and bold move because you can't sneak it out. There's nothing secretive about it.
Right. It's not like jumping a fence and, snatching up some morels and running off. Like it's, silent. You leave no trace. It's
right.
This is like you said. There's chainsaws. There's equipment. There's like, it's not quiet, but I guess it happened. So, said it was theft totaled 10 trees with a standing timber value of nearly $4,000. So, that's what I wanted to touch on there. So now, if you're ready, should we get into food?
Good to go. Food.
All right. So, first thing I want to touch on is I want to talk about some of the smaller game species first, and then get into deer. We primarily hunt deer, but we do a fair bit of, or started here recently doing a fair bit of squirrel hunting and turkey hunting, mostly spring. We don't really, we might be, I haven't bought a fall turkey tag, but, I don't know if Jeff buys a fall turkey tag or, opportunistic fall turkey hunters, if you will. No, I don't think any of us go out fall turkey hunting. But so for turkey, my two tops are just the classic fried turkey nuggets with the turkey breast. Like I made those. I don't know. Maybe it's because I didn't get a turkey this year, so it was my turkey from last year. But I fried up a bunch of just cubed up the breast meat and fried that stuff up. And it's just, man, because, Ella's 3 going on 4, right? So chicken nuggets are on the menu somewhat frequently, right? She likes chicken nuggets, and I don't know a kid that doesn't, but man, just a homemade fried nugget, it just blows all these other like fast food nuggets out of the water. It's just, and it's easy, right? You just bread them up, fry them in oil, and enjoy, right? So that's a good go-to for turkey breast meat. For the legs, I've done, and it's a like low and slow, right? If that's the thing you got to remember with the legs, right? Because there's those turkey walk on those legs all the time, and so basically just put them in a pot of, you can season the water or whatever in water or stock, and just simmer the legs for hours, like low and slow. I'm talking 3, 4, 5 hours until the meat gets tender, because it's going to take a while to break all that stuff down. And then pull it out, shred it up, and you can keep it like that for a while in the fridge if if you don't want to do this all at once. But then what I did is it's a Hank Shaw recipe for turkey carnitas. And basically you then take that shredded meat, put it back in a pan with some oil, and fry those shredded bits up. You don't bread them or anything, but just fry them so that they get like those crispy ends and stuff on them, and make turkey carnitas. And that was really good. But that's that's not a quick after work, I'm gonna whip this up. It's like there's some prep involved with that, right? It's prep. Like I said,
there's some
low and slow, couple hours. And you can break it up, right? Do the simmering one day and then make the carnitas quick after work one day kind of thing. But those are kind of I really like those two for turkey.
Yeah, I mean, I've never, if you listen to our previous episodes, I've never shot a turkey, so I don't have a whole lot to add to the turkey recipe. But what I have heard and what I do know is you just have to go into turkey with the mindset of it's wild turkey.
Yeah.
Your wild turkey is not going to taste like your butterball from the store.
Yep.
They're entirely different. Your apples and oranges.
Yep.
Like you said, the the legs of a wild turkey take some time to make them tender and palatable, versus a turkey leg off a butterball. Well, that turkey was probably in a pen its entire life and never really walked much.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So it's a different animal. You can't serve a wild turkey like you would a butterball, which is fitting, like you said, it's around Thanksgiving right now. It's just different. It's not going to taste the same. And if you expect it to, you're not going to like wild turkey.
Yeah. You're going to be disappointed.
Right. So you just got to, there's plenty of recipes to make it very, very good, even better than a butterball turkey. But it's just, you got to acknowledge the fact that they're different.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess one other thing I'll add is a lot of this stuff, like, none of us are chefs or anything. We don't cook for a living. We enjoy eating wild meat. And so, we found different ways by Googling recipes or using wild game cookbooks. So a lot of this stuff that we're going to talk about comes from either Hank Shaw's wild game cookbook called Buck Buck Moose. That's for basically what I'll call your big game, right? Your deer, your antelope, your moose, your elk, that kind of stuff. All of that stuff can kind of be used interchangeably. Just the cuts are bigger and or smaller. And then Steve Rinella's The Meat Eater, what is it? Meat Eater Cookbook? Meat Eater Fishing Game Cookbook. So I'll put links to both of those cookbooks in the show notes if you guys are interested. But that's where a lot of these sort of recipes or things come from. And then you can also sign up for, well, you don't have to sign up for, but you can use Hank Shaw's website, which is honest-food.net, or just, Google Hank Shaw. I'll put a link to his website in here too, but he's got tons of recipes for all different wild game species, whether, it's fish, it's dove, it's turkey, it's elk, it's deer, it's, he's got tons of stuff in there. So lots of good recipes in that stuff. So I'll make sure to have links to all of that in the show notes so you guys can find that. But that's where a lot of this stuff comes from. So moving on to squirrel. So like I said, we're by no means hardcore squirrel hunters, but I do enjoy some squirrel hunting. And so one thing that we had here recently, and I didn't make it, so I can't comment on how it's made, but I think I've mentioned on here before how my mother-in-law makes killer pot pies, and now she usually makes them with chicken. But I had a few squirrels left over from last year, and so I recently had, I cooked this meat up. She said, if you cook the meat up, I'll put it in a pot pie for you. So I recently had her make squirrel pot pies, which turned out quite nice. And so if you know how to make a pot pie, or somebody that knows how to make a pot pie, I recommend putting some squirrel meat in one instead of some chicken, because it's a good way to eat squirrels. The other thing, and Jake, you can attest to this, right? Because I think you made these, is the buffalo squirrel legs as another way to eat squirrel. Yeah. I'm not by any means a professional, but I did make some buffalo squirrel legs, or squirrel hot legs, however you want to call them. And that came out of the Meat Eater cookbook, right? He's got a recipe in there. Yeah. And they turned out good. I mean, again, it's different. You just have to keep your mind open. You know what I mean? It's different than going to the local sports pub and eating hot wings. You know what I mean? It's a wild animal. It was a little tougher, a little chewier, but again, it was good. I mean, it wasn't that it wasn't good. Yeah. It's just, they're a lot smaller than a buffalo wing at the sports bar. You know what I mean? It's because a chicken leg is a lot bigger than a squirrel leg. But it was good. I enjoyed it. Like I said, it's a good way to eat wild meat. I mean, I
I'd make them again if I had, or I will make them again, when I get squirrel.
Yeah.
It's a good way.
I mean, you can put buffalo sauce on just about anything and make it
Right. Make it good.
taste good. Yeah.
Right. It's
But,
up there. It's up there with bacon and cheese. It makes everything better.
Right. Yeah. I want to pause here briefly to talk about our sponsor, Monster Whitetail Grub. So, Monster Whitetail Grub is a great deer feed company, and they make a great product. We've had really good success with the product. And the good thing is, now that the rut is winding down and gun season is over, we do have the extended gun season coming up, but deer are going to be getting back on that food to cover pattern, right? And so feed is a great tool to get deer on your property if you got a small piece of property, or to get them on a pattern and fill those last tags that you've got. So if you want some feed, I would encourage you to check out Monster Whitetail Grub. Like I said, it's a good product. We've had very good success with it. We just stocked up on a bunch for the remainder of the season, so get it while the getting's good. They support us, and they make a great product. So, link in the show notes again, as always. That's the best way to find stuff that we talk about during the podcast. Link in the show notes on how to get a hold of them and order some of their stuff. And with that, let's get back to the episode. So, the other way, and I haven't made them this way ever, but I remember as kids we would go squirrel hunting down at the cabin, and I think Dad just like roasted them whole. Do you remember that? He would put them in that roasting pan with like potatoes and I think a little bit of liquid in there and cover it in foil.
Yeah,
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I vaguely remember him. Yeah,
and
we would just like pick them apart after they were cooked. It was like a
yeah, I remember them being good. So, any other small game tips or recipes you want to mention before we move on to whitetails?
I mean, you made those, or was it you or Jeff? I don't know. One of you made those pheasant.
Oh, the dove
Poppers. That's what it was, or whatever.
Yeah.
Not pheasant. I apologize. Yeah, dove. Those turned out really good.
Yeah. So I made. They weren't really like jalapeno poppers, but basically I took dove breast and I put a piece of just green pepper in there, and then rolled it in bacon, put a toothpick in it, and grilled those. And I mean, like we said before, right? Put bacon on anything, right? And it's all of a sudden quite nice. So if you wanted to taste the dove, that wasn't really a good way to prepare them, right? It was very much a bacon dish with dove filling, if you will. But I mean, they were good. They disappeared quick.
Yeah.
So I guess I would definitely make those again. I would like to try them as jalapeno dove poppers. But they're more of like an appetizer, I would say. They're not going to be.
Yeah, that's kind of how I would think of them. They're good for like a party or something. You put them out on a plate and they'll disappear pretty quick.
Yeah. They're real good for that kind of thing. So now on to venison. So as we've gotten older, right, we've tried to expand our what's the word, venison usage, right? We're trying to use more in different cuts, right? We've discovered the bounty of venison heart, right? We've always just left those in the gut pile, and here recently over the past couple of years discovered that, boy, I wish I hadn't have been leaving those in the gut pile all along.
Ain't that the truth?
Because they're real good.
They are real good. Like, I would argue they are if not the best piece of meat off a deer, definitely top 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Like, they are real good.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get past the fact that it's a heart, and once you get it trimmed up and everything, it doesn't even look like a heart.
No, it's nothing but the most tender steak you'll ever have.
Right. Yeah. So why don't you, because I know I think you've at this point probably cooked more of them than I have. So why don't you run through how you like to prepare them?
Again, this is from the Meat Eater, one of the Meat Eater books. How I kind of to prepare them or prep them to cook, I guess. You basically cut. I mean, you'd have to visualize a heart, I guess, or everyone that's harvested a deer has seen a deer heart. You cut the top off, which has a lot of like the valves and arteries and veins that all comes into the top of the heart, a lot of the arteries and everything. So you cut all that off. Then when you cut that off, it'll open up. You'll be able to see the different chambers of the heart. Anyone who has any anatomy background, there's 4 chambers to a heart. And you basically run water in through there and get all the blood and clotted. It's almost like Jello, coagulated, dark red, brown, almost like coagulated nastiness, basically.
Yeah.
So you run water in there, and it'll run in one chamber and shoot down through and out the other, because that's how your heart works. So you blow all that stuff out with water, basically, just at the sink. Now, once you get it cleaned out, the way that I cut it up is I basically just cut it into, like I said, almost like steaks, 1/2-inch slices, just straight. You lay it down on its side, basically, and I just cut straight down through it. And all the way down, section it up all the way down. And then I've made it 2 different ways. I've just made it fried it in some oil, basically, and put some spices and seasoning on it, just straight that way. Whatever your favorite, you almost can treat it like a steak at that point. So like your favorite steak rub, so to speak. I've done it that way, and then I've also marinated it in a marinade that, I've kind of come up with myself, or any cookbook. Again, treat it like a steak almost. Marinate it and cook it that way. And I've never actually cooked mine on the grill. I've always pan fried them. I'm sure they'd be excellent on the grill. I just haven't done it. And then you can either, you eat it, you cook it basically like a steak. Venison is by default, a little less fatty and juicy, so to speak, than beef. So you kind of have to be a little bit low and slow with it. You don't want to make it overcook it. You know what I mean? You got to take it's a shorter cooking time, but that's in general with venison versus beef. But yeah, I just cook it in some oil, and then like I said, I doctor it up just like I would a steak, basically. And if I'm giving it to the kids, I cube it up after I've cooked it, and they devour it. If I'm eating it, my wife won't eat it, but if I'm eating it, I leave it whole and eat it kind of like I would a steak. I just put a whole circle at that point. It's a circle on my plate. But yeah, basically I just cook it like a steak and serve it up that way. Lindsay won't eat it. She just can't get past the fact that it's a heart. If I could convince her to just try it, I know she would love it. Because honestly, it's almost like if I had to explain it in terms of like beef and like it's so tender, it's almost like a prime rib.
Okay.
It's, you know what I mean? It's like, there is no toughness to it. It's just all that like real tender. So yeah, it's really, really good. And again, I'm no professional chef. So anyone who has any ability to actually cook, so to speak, I'm sure will make it taste even better than I can.
Yeah.
But just me, basically Joe Schmo, who doesn't know anything about cooking, I can follow a recipe in a cookbook and I just throw a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and it is really, really good.
So I do mine a little differently. So I do the same thing. I flush the hearts out, run them under cold water, get all that gunk out of there. But then instead of slicing, like laying the heart on its side and making slices, I look in the top of the heart and you'll see, right, there's thick sections and thin sections. And where like the wall of the heart gets thin, I make a vertical cut through that from the top of the heart down to the bottom and sort of open it up, if you will, and then slice it into like 3 or maybe 4, probably 3 like major chunks. And so you end up with like 3 thick chunks of meat. And then I grill them like that. And so I have cooked them on the grill, and you just cook them until, you wouldn't really want to take them anything past medium, I would say. And then I slice them up, and eat them like that. And they've turned out really, really good.
Yeah. So, my wife has been out of town the last few days, and like I said, she doesn't eat it, so I'm in charge of feeding myself and the kids. So we got after my buck heart the last 2 days, and
nice.
It was quite nice. My son loved it. Lily is a little older, and she did try it, but I think her mom's got her convinced that it's not good because it's hard.
Yeah.
But she secretly liked it, I think. She's just like, Daddy, that's the heart.
Yeah.
But like you said, once it's cut up and cooked, I mean, you won't know the difference.
Right. Yeah.
But my son was just smashing it the last 2 days. Him and I have been eating. We ate the whole thing in the last 2 days. It's been nice.
The other, and I don't keep these because, not that they're gross, but by no means, what I say they're gross, but I don't know. I don't prefer them, is the liver. But Dad has been saving the livers, and he said, he again, I think this was a liver preparation that we found in Hank Shaw's Buck Moose on how to soak them and prepare the livers. But he really likes them. Him and Mom have been having venison liver and onions and been tearing that stuff up. So if you like liver and onions, if that's something, if like beef liver is something that you like, that's another good way to use another part that normally gets left in the gut pile.
Right. Yeah. And again, I'm not a big liver eater. Dad saved the liver from my buck because he helped me kind of process it. And he debated it because he had just had liver from when we were down rut weekend. Because again, anytime any of us get a deer, we give him the liver.
Right.
But he debated it. He was like, I don't know. And then he called Mom, and she told him to bring it home. So I know they made that. He sent me a picture of liver and onions. They made that. But as far as I know, the most important part of the liver is you've got to get all the blood out, which is the soaking. It's a soaking process. You got to soak it in whatever it is. Again, I'm not super familiar because I don't do it, but it's, I think, milk or at least water. But I think milk, they say, works really well too. But you got to draw all the blood out of that liver so it doesn't have that real irony taste.
Okay.
But again, any cookbook with a liver recipe, I'm sure will go over that as to how to do that and what the best way is. But yeah, liver and onions is definitely something I know the old man and Mom enjoy.
Yeah. So now I want to get into, or I guess we should get into some of the more, I guess you'd say, traditional cuts. So we grind a lot of our venison, right? That's how we use it. That's how it gets used up. I always have grand plans of, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to cut tomahawk steaks, and I'm going to do all this stuff. And then when it comes down to it, it's like, I'm just going to grind most of this up. But that's, ground is, for the phase of life we're in, right? Ground is so easy, so convenient, and it's so versatile, right? We
Right.
use it in everything, right? We make tacos out of it. We make chili out of it. We make spaghetti out of it. Like,
Yeah.
we can do so much with it. I even made like beef and broccoli, like Chinese, but I made it with ground. And so, normally when I'm cooking with ground, I really like to break my ground up and burgers. I don't know how I forgot burgers. You can make burgers out of ground, but because I was going for that more like Chinese kind of chunks of beef and broccoli, I tried not to fool with the ground and leave it in kind of bigger chunks, and that turned out good. It's a little different than like your traditional beef and broccoli, but I really liked it, and basically just found a recipe online for beef and broccoli, and I just made it with ground venison instead. So,
Right.
but we do a lot with ground. I think you guys do a lot with ground. Now we when we have ours ground, we don't add anything to it, but you guys typically have some additives added to your ground, right?
Yeah. We add pork fat, our processor. I have no idea what the ratio or how much. It's not a lot. For a typical, I don't know, doe, so to speak, your average deer, I want to say they add like maybe 2 pounds of pork fat total for all of it. Because I grind a lot of my deer, I grind the whole thing, which I know is like the cardinal sin. The back straps or the holy grail or the tenderloins, or I typically grind everything, and that's just because that's what my wife cooks with.
Right.
So a beautiful backstrap or beautiful tenderloin does me no good if it never comes out of the freezer.
Yep.
So I typically grind pretty much all of my deer, and that, I think it's just a few pounds total of pork fat. So the ratio is not high. It's not. I don't know if you get 50 pounds of meat and they put a pound of pork fat. I don't know exactly the ratio at all. If you're someone who does it all yourself, you'd have to look into that more.
Yeah.
But any processor, I would imagine, if you ask them, hey, could you add a little pork fat, they'd be able to do that. I personally don't know that it makes a difference. I think it's more just my wife comes from a non-wild game eating background, and all she ever had heard before, her dad will not eat venison. He's like anti-venison. So I think she just grew up thinking it was no good. Never had it because her dad wouldn't eat it, so her mom wouldn't make it, type thing.
Right.
Her mom likes it, but so I think it's more just a precautionary thing. We've never had it any other way, type thing. But when you guys cook something at your house, Lindsay has no problem eating it, and there's no pork fat in that. You know what I mean? I don't taste a big difference personally. But you know what they say, happy wife, happy life. If she wants it that way, I got no problem doing it that way. Because like I said, I don't taste the difference. And we do the similar stuff with our ground. We do spaghetti, burgers, tacos, anything you would use ground beef for. Basically, we substitute venison, and it is, we very, very, very rarely ever get ground beef for anything.
Right.
So but yeah, burgers are kind of I don't want to say claim to fame because it's nothing special, but my family really loves when I make burgers, deer burgers.
Yeah.
Like I said, my recipe for that is nothing special. I use breadcrumbs because that's like the primary problem that a lot of people have with ground venison, is it doesn't stick together like ground beef does.
Right.
So I put some breadcrumbs in to kind of form a patty out of it, and then I have no idea what the measurements are, but I use breadcrumbs, I use Worcestershire sauce, and then I use a couple, again, spices out of the cabinet. I pretty much just open it up and dab a little bit on my hand and say, oh, okay, yeah, we'll put some of that in there. And I don't have a set, 2 or 3 spices that I use. It's just whatever my wife has in there that I think would make a good burger. And
Now, do you have measurements for the breadcrumbs? Or is
no,
that just by feel?
it's by feel. Unfortunately, I don't have a measurement. It's mostly by feel. I just pour some in there. You obviously can overdo it. You don't want to make like a cakey burger, so to speak. But, so I guess I would suggest, starting low, and then if you realize your burgers are falling apart next time, add more. But for me, it's by feel. If you have a 1 pound chunk, I guess, of ground venison, you plop it in a bowl. You pretty much want to, again, it's nothing scientific about this, but I pretty much cover the 1 pound square in breadcrumbs and then fold it kind of over inside and mix it up. That's basically how I judge it.
Okay.
You don't want like a big mound of breadcrumbs or half a bowl of breadcrumbs by any means, but it's because you're not doing it to add any flavor or anything. It's primarily to hold it together. Some people use eggs. For me, breadcrumbs are just easier.
Okay.
I've used eggs before, but again, my family and we prefer to have our meat a little on the more medium side. So that's where I worry about eggs if I'm not cooking it thoroughly, if there's a raw egg in there, I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's where breadcrumbs work for me.
Yeah. So you mentioned the tenderloin, there a little while back, and I am going to go out on a limb there and say that the tenderloins are a little bit overrated. Right, I think they're overblown because, don't get me wrong, they are a great cut of meat, like tender, great cut of meat. But on a deer, they're so small, right? It's not really, unless you get a big giant buck that has big tenderloins, I guess. But they're generally not enough to feed your if you have a family of 4 or something. It's generally not enough to feed your family, and so it's kind of hard. Like because I've ground the tenderloins before too, and the processor will call me like, "Hey, your tenderloins are in here. And it's like, yeah, grind them because they, as much as I want to use them, a lot of times they don't get, because the opportunity never presents itself. Right. If I was cooking for myself,
right.
Oh yeah, I'll pull this tenderloin out, but
it's kind of a lot of work for not a whole lot of product, so to speak.
Yeah. And I feel like sacrilegious about that. Like I feel bad every time I do it, but the reality is, like you said, it doesn't do me a ton of good if it just sits in my freezer because the opportunity to cook it never comes up. Right, we're in a phase of life where we are all about quick down and dirty meals. Something we can either throw in the crock pot or whip up real quick after work, and ground fits that bill for us, and roasts. Right, that's a good crock pot thing. So I am trying this year because in years past I haven't really kept roasts. Unless I use a chunk of the backstrap as, and cook that as like a roast. But this year I saved, and they go by a couple names. The beef equivalent, I think, is like a top sirloin or a top round. I've heard them called a ball roast. But basically it's that like football shaped hunk of meat on the deer's hind quarter. And the reason I save those is, one, they come off really easy. If you have a deer hanging by the hind quarters, you find that knee joint and basically cut in, you get below that knee, cut straight back in till you hit the bone, and then turn your knife parallel to the bone and come down. and that solid hunk of meat will basically peel out of there. And so you've got this, it's a couple pound hunk of meat. Like I said, it's kind of football shaped, and get it trimmed up, and it's ready for the freezer. I trim. There's not usually a lot of fat on it, but any of that, like, where it connects to either the next muscle group or the bone, or, I kind of trim that up. Any of that kind of silvery membrane over the muscle, right? I like to trim that off till I get down to red meat. And, so that's just kind of filleting that stuff off of there. And then it's a great looking piece of meat, right? And so I'm looking forward to cooking those this year. And what I'm hoping to do with those is our crock pot, and we've never used this feature, but I'm going to try and use it. Our crock pot has a temperature probe included with it. So you can plug this temperature probe in, put it into the meat, and then set a desired temperature. And then once it hits that temperature, once the internals of the meat hit that temperature, the crock pot goes into warm mode. And so I'm thinking I'm going to, cook this thing to, internal temperature 145, 150, and give it that, that sort of medium roast, and then kind of shave it thin is what I'm like. I don't have a way to like really shave it, but just kind of carve it in thin slices, and like maybe some coarse salt and pepper on them, and eat it like that. Which I haven't eaten dinner yet tonight, and so that's sounding
making you salivate. Sounds good.
Yes. So if you hear me slobbering, that's why. But yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to that as a roast, instead of just like put it in the crock pot on high for 4 hours or whatever. Like I kind of want to pay a little more attention to it, and because like you said, a beef roast, it's got that fat marbled in there, and it all like renders down real nice. And this I want to do a little differently. See how it turns out. Again, it's not going to be a after work thing, but like on a Saturday or something, a kind of a slow Saturday where I can keep an eye on. Because the other thing I don't know about crock pots these days is they seem to cook hot. Like even on warm, like we'll make chili or something and just set it on, low for 6 or 8 hours or something, and then it goes into warm mode. And you'll walk over and the stuff's still boiling and the crock pot's in warm mode, been in warm mode. So I don't know how hot, quote unquote warm mode is on our crock pot. So I kind of want to be around once it hits that temperature to kind of be ready to pull it and be ready to eat, sort of thing. But that's my idea.
Sounds good to me.
So, and I like the fact that they're easy to get off, right? It doesn't take a lot of work to fool with them, right? They come off the deer pretty easy. Front shoulders, like we said, we grind a lot of that. You can. I saw a video, and it's one of these things that I want to try someday. Is like a blade roast, a bone-in blade roast. So that upper part of the shoulder with the shoulder blade in it, right? You can separate that joint, and you end up with a big hunk of meat. And I think if I remember, Meat Eater, like I said, Meat Eater has a video on this, but I think you braise it. So like you sear it in a hot pan, and then you cook it in liquid for a long time, and all that like connective tissue in there kind of melts out of there and adds some flavor and things like that. And in the video it looked real good, but again, it's not a quick after work thing. There's some time involved in preparing one of those. Maybe you could put it, if you had a big crock pot, maybe you could put it in a crock pot and get similar results. But might be something worth trying. The other thing, and I think I might try this year, is venison ribs. I've seen a couple videos on venison ribs, and it looks easy enough, right? You get that stuff trimmed off the outside.
My thing with venison ribs is, how do you cut them off? With a bone saw? Or what do you...
Yeah. So you saw them off, like where they connect to the vertebrae, and then saw them into, like, 4-inch lengths, and then you can cut them into slabs at that point. Or I think at that point, once they're cut into those shorter sections, I think you can just roll them up and freeze them like that. But I think you want to get a lot of that fat and tissue kind of trimmed off the outside. I don't think they're going to be as meaty as like a beef rib or a pork rib, but I've heard from multiple sources that, venison ribs are another one of those things that once you've cooked them, you're going to be upset that you've been leaving them in the woods or been throwing them away all this time. So I'm thinking about, like we said, this is before Thanksgiving, so we're coming up on gun season. So I'm thinking about trying to save some ribs this year and give those a try. Again, it'll be a Saturday thing when I've got time, but I just the preparations that I've seen. So Meat Eater again has a good video on this, and I'll link to this in the show notes. But it just looks really, really good and not all that hard to make. So anything else we want to touch on here before we shut her down?
Trying to think of... Oh, the one thing I wanted to touch on that I don't know how I forgot. And again, you don't necessarily have to do it with ground. That's just how I typically do it because I grind most of my deer. But jerky.
Oh, yeah.
Deer jerky or anything. I mean, the processor can do all kinds of things with your deer, but deer jerky, I'm actually making some right now while we're recording this. I use ground because, again, we grind a lot of our deer, and then a jerky gun and whatever, but you can make it from whole cuts of meat. That's another option.
Yep. That's a great way to use up your venison, especially if you have some of that ground left over and you're wanting to get your freezer cleared out before you start stocking it back up. That's a great way to kind of use up those last few packages of ground. Or that's another good use for those hind leg muscles, right? Like that same thing, that sirloin tip would be a good one to slice because there's not a lot of connective tissue running through it. It's a pretty clean piece of meat, and you could slice that one up into jerky and make more traditional jerky, if you will. So with that, like I said, we'll have links in the show notes to these videos, these cookbooks, and hopefully this will release after gun season. So hopefully you guys, at least I think it'll release after gun season. Pretty sure it will. It might release the Tuesday of gun season. No, it won't. I got my weeks mixed up. So this will release after gun season. Hopefully you guys got some deer during gun season, and you're going to be trying some of our favorite preparations, or obviously you guys all have favorite preparations, which if you have other ways that you like that are quick and easy, they're like I said, those good sort of quick after work, throw something together, would love to hear them, right? I'm always looking for different ways of cooking wild game, whether it's squirrels, whether it's turkeys, deer, whatever it is. Let us know. Send us your favorite recipes, and we might give them a try. So with that, thanks everybody for listening, and stay safe out there. Okay, so that's going to do it for this week's episode. Hopefully there was something that was helpful for you in there. Maybe it encourages you to try something different. Keep a piece of the deer that you don't normally keep. Maybe you try some heart or something like that. And as I said in the episode, I'm always looking for different ways of preparing venison that are quick and easy, that I can either prep ahead of time and then whip together after work, or I can put in a slow cooker, something that is quick and easy, that doesn't require a lot of time watching it or things like that. Something that I can put together after work quickly. So if you've got those, put them in the comments on the post where we share this episode, or just send us a message. You guys know how to get a hold of us. We're Ohio Huntsman on Facebook, Ohio Huntsman _podcast on Instagram, or you can go to our website. We've got a contact us section on our website, ohiohuntsman.com. Lots of different ways to get in touch with us, and we like hearing from you guys. The other thing I want to tell you about is I just added a new Ohio Huntsman sticker to our shop on our website. So we've had our Ohio Huntsman decals, which are the vinyl decals, or the transfer style decals, a bumper sticker or whatever you want to put them on. They work on anything. But now we've got peel and stick stickers, and a couple different sizes. They range, I think they're 3x3 all the way up to like a 5.5 by 5.5 sticker. So if that's something you're interested in, go to ohiohuntsman.com/apparel, and you'll see a decals button there, and that's where they'll be. And so with that, thanks for listening.